Do we need to have any executive session tonight, John?
I don't have a need to talk in executive session.
I don't, I guess. We have none of that. Do we have a need to amend the agenda tonight?
No.
Weren't we gonna switch around?
We'll just.
You just do it?
I'll
Okay.
just do
All
it.
right, okay.
I'm not gonna amend it, we'll just do it.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Act on the select board minutes of September 18th revised.
Right, we had that discussion at the last
Yep,
meeting.
we did. We just need to sign them.
Corrected?
They have been corrected, I checked it. I'll make this easier. And we have the minutes of October 2nd. Any corrections, omissions on October 2nd? Hearing none. Any questions on the orders?
I just jump in to make a couple of points.
You
First,
may.
thank you. The original order has the lift tech bill that everyone's been awaiting.
Right.
And there is an explanation in the bill of what they did. Then I followed up in tonight's materials. You'll see my series of questions to Lift Tech about the bill and their answers to it. I also want to point out in tonight's packet of bills, there's quite a few, more than usual, because we have 3 weeks till the next select board meeting, and they're trying to pay off as many as they can up in the front office.
So, I have a question on who did you polygraph?
Oh, that's David Sulia, the new police
Oh,
recruit.
okay, all right.
That's standard operating procedure.
Well, I'm thinking,
Nothing about
I know it wasn't me, but
Yeah, I
I,
know. That's,
okay, all right.
Would you like a polygraph?
no, we
I don't
can
care.
arrange one.
Yeah.
Just tell me the
That's
subject
pricey,
matter
maybe.
and we'll line it up.
Looks like I signed one.
How are the village lights and Main Street lights separated? I don't remember them being separated like that.
That's a very good point.
They shouldn't be. They're all.
I
Because
don't
they're
know.
in two,
All
there's
one thing.
two separate.
There might be
Let me see that.
a particular
Oh,
definition of
that's a-
village which doesn't encapsulate those that are more far-flung, a little bit before, a little bit after the village, but let me check on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's only 146, so it can't be very
Yeah.
many
I know
lights.
for, yeah, it's a good question.
Bottom.
I think we've had, in the past at least, we've had some streetlights on or near the Omea entrance, the Omea
Oh.
Florence entrance.
Okay.
But that shouldn't count for all of that extra money. Let me check on that.
All right, yeah, thanks.
Yep.
A question that police truck lights and council $3,472. I realize it's a new truck and we're getting it equipped and ready for service, but if it's not too big a problem, I'd like to see a total list of all the expenses that have gone into this new truck, so that we can say, well, this new vehicle represents how much money. Because as I recall, there was some talk about some things being transferred from one vehicle to another. But I realize there is some updating and changes that have to be made, and so,
I can get that to you, and I'll also make a note that we did get a grant
donation
from our
for the
friends at
grant.
Omea to
Yeah,
offset
that's-
most of the cost of
And
that.
some of it, Joe, was, half of that cost was taking out the stuff
From the old,
from the old car to trade it in.
yeah.
That was like $1,800 to strip it out.
We'll get you a report for next time.
So, yeah, that would be interesting, just, I think some people would appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, that was the other question I had. I don't remember ever seeing the Rural Water Association.
Oh, yeah, well, the town is a member through the water department. It's a kind of a nonprofit devoted to being of assistance and putting on educational classes and other things of benefit to local water departments.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of annual dues.
question on tonight's orders. Town manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Update on Whipple Hollow and West Creek Road projects. The town's paving contractor, DNF Paving, has come and gone, finishing up, I believe, last Friday. Markowski is now working on shoulders and cleanup on both stretches of road, Whipple Hollow and West Creek Road, that were recently reconstructed and paved. They believe, or they hope to, they'll be able to complete their work by the end of this week. As soon as we have the invoices, we'll forward them to V-Trans to collect our $175,000 highway grant that was devoted to the Whipple Hollow project. The transfer station roof project is seeing some progress. Again, we learned that there's no permit needed from the Department of Environmental Conservation. There was a town permit required. That's been issued, and the 15-day appeal period has passed with no objections or appeals lodged. Now we're simply waiting on the state fire marshal's permit. They told me last Wednesday that they were hoping soon to send that out the door to us. We've asked our contractor to be ready and get us on the schedule. This year, we have the 39th annual Haunted House event, a source of lots of thrills and chills for most kids of all ages, except for the 5 and belows. Chief Hooker, maybe you want to mention the fact that it's upcoming and will be taking place Friday and Saturday, October 18th, 19th, and 25th, 26th.
Right, Friday night's our first night. Adults are $10. Children under 12 are 5.
And that's been the same
We've
forever.
kept that for many years, as long as
Yeah.
I can remember. We want it to be a family event,
Mhm.
and it turns out to be such. So it's a good time for everybody. We couldn't do it without all the help we get from local organizations and townspeople, so we thank them in advance. And come on out and get a good show. We're ready.
Whether you're in Proctor or Hubbardton.
Doesn't matter.
Come on over.
Come on over. We'll scare you.
Okay, great. Listers update. Donna Wilson has agreed in writing to the terms that I laid out in writing, just to confirm what we discussed at the last select board meeting. And so she's just awaiting word from the listers as to when her services will be needed. The town manager is working with VLCT to have them at least give us a proposal on what it would take to have an attorney from their municipal assistance center to come down and discuss all of our various lister options, including the logistics that go with each choice that the board might want to make or that the people at town meeting might want to make. So stay tuned. I'm hoping that that'll happen at one of the November meetings, but if not, maybe the early December meeting. They're somewhat busy. They're going to check with their staff attorneys and get back to me with dates. The town has also received an email from a town resident interested in serving as lister, but I would suggest maybe since we've got one lister and two consultants just gearing up to work, that maybe this late in the year, it doesn't make much sense to do an appointment of another person who has probably little to no experience. As good a guy as he is, this is Kit Shaw, who's worked and helped us in the past on a volunteer basis. So I'll give him that feedback. Village sidewalk project, I have asked some engineering firms to generate cost estimates to perform very primitive, very rudimentary design, which would be at least minimally acceptable to V-Trans. As you know, V-Trans has said that there must be a design in place. I think that's beyond what I and the highway crew can do. So we've asked these firms to get back to us, keeping things as reasonable as possible and recognizing that this is going to be a short-term project with not a long life to it, hopefully. So as soon as I have those, I expect to have those by November 6th so we can discuss them. We just need to remember that only construction costs are grant eligible, not engineering, so that would come out of our pockets.
When's that next cycle of that bicycle and pedestrian grant?
There's another one due for November 22nd, I believe, for anybody interested in that kind of project. Of course, with that, you're talking about a different grant program that I believe mixes both federal and state money together, which generates usually a 3 or 4 year turnaround for those kind of projects.
Okay.
The reason we went with this state program was that the governor said, or the governor's office said, you'll be able to go much quicker with much less oversight and much more freedom of action and swiftness by going with the state small project grant program, which is what we did.
So if there is a deadline though for the other one for next month, does it make sense then to look at something that would be,
Yeah,
that we'd be looking at a few years ahead?
I'm more than happy if anyone has suggestions as to whether they think additional sidewalk or pedestrian or bicycling venues should be thought about. Please approach me, let me know. If I thought about it, and I have briefly in the past, I would think about an extension down Arch Street, down to the Catholic Church. I'd also think about Plains Road, which seems to get an awful lot of morning foot traffic, maybe from where the
From here to,
retail development might
Yeah.
leave off
From here
with its
to the end.
sidewalk.
Up
from
to here, to
from
here.
town
That-
office to the 7 might
Those
be
are a couple of projects
Yeah.
that we can at
That might
least
be a good
scope
one.
out.
Well, I would think
Yeah.
we got nothing to lose by
Yeah.
trying.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
I mean,
Definitely-
Brandon's
definitely
putting in a
good.
new sidewalk to nowhere,
To nowhere, oh
so,
God, yeah, both sides.
yeah.
I wouldn't say nowhere.
Well, a sewer plant.
Well,
So yeah, if anybody feels strongly about a particular project you'd like to see pursued, let me know. Otherwise, I'll pick something and we'll go with that. and
Okay.
yeah,
see
because
where
we
it
could
takes us.
even, at some point, extend sidewalks even down the street over here, like Toronto, some of
Yeah.
these streets that are.
Elm Street.
Elm Street. a lot
Well,
of-
so,
Yeah.
and what are the parameters? You kind of just have to
Yeah.
choose a section when you're
Well,
applying
You
for
need
it?
to be mindful of the budget, of the amount of
Oh, yeah.
funds available, and see what can be done within that general budget
Okay.
framework. And there are certain rules of the road, rules
Yeah.
of thumb, how many dollars per
Mhm.
linear foot. that kind of
Okay.
thing. Okay,
At this point, do we have any knowledge or any information on what Route 7 might look like someday when the state gets done with it?
we have
We
conceptual
had it
drawings
there.
that were written about 8 years ago. They're now in the more close to the final design phase, which is why they've asked the town to produce its own water and sewer utility relocation design for this village
Oh, yeah.
segment too. so that they can plug it into their design, and then have a design that's finalized, and then start talking to residents about rights of way and eminent
Yeah.
domain, or purchasing pieces of land
Long
along
ways
the
away.
roadway.
Unfortunately.
Which is why, again, they're starting to do that now, knowing that it takes several years to get that together.
Well, for Pittsford, it's gonna be different than it was up in Brandon because of the fact that the town took care of the road through Brandon and the
That's
state
right.
takes care of the road down here.
That's right.
And so when it comes to our water and sewer line,
We're gonna have to.
as it stands right now, my understanding is that Pittsford's gonna have to pay for a bigger share of,
Yeah, the state pays for as deep as they do the excavation. Anything beyond that is the town for the digging and for the material. And so we've seen estimates of $3 to $4 million to replace the town's water and sewer along the segment 2 corridor.
the hell are we gonna handle that?
It'll be a
It's a
burn.
good question. I do have feelers out to the state to see about whether we could be eligible for the same treatment that Brandon got by agreeing to take over maintenance. Of course, I would never make that decision without all you folks involved, but I'd like to explore whether that's even feasible, or whether we need to think about other ways to fund that project.
The only reason we didn't was because of the bridges, and if they
I
rebuild the
know.
bridge down there by
Right.
Conway's
That's
Mobile,
at least one
that might
concern out the window.
make us look different at that.
Yeah.
Now, because if we do that, I would hope that we would separate sewer and stormwater.
Yep.
So
Well,
is that,
the state deals with stormwater.
Right.
Our job is just to get
Sewer
the
and-
sewer and water out from under the road so they can be
Under.
accessed without having to dig and interact with V-Trans and dig under their new road. And there also needs to be separation between water and sewer, of course. Yeah.
Right.
Horizontal separation.
okay, so there, because I was just thinking if maybe through some of this water quality stuff, we could get some money, as long as we're separating those two
Oh, yeah,
entities.
there's no question that there are
There'll be some
grant and
grants.
or low-interest loan programs available, and it's all about seeing what works best for us when the time comes for the work to be done. We're gonna seek a planning loan now, which is at 50% forgivable, to do the design work on water and sewer. We just agreed to work with a particular firm to get them going, because V-Trans has asked for a 60% design plan by the end of the year. So that's gonna be this engineering firm hustling to meet that deadline, and we will fund it through a planning loan, which will again be half forgivable.
Well, we don't wanna find ourselves, the state coming in to do their work and we're not ready to.
Right. No, that's
We
why
gotta-
they've asked us to put it on the table sooner than later in their engineering process. Yeah.
Okay, do we have any select board remarks tonight? I think that covered it, didn't it?
Well, no,
You may have something on the,
yeah, the
Water quality.
water quality
Yeah.
stuff, yeah, we had a meeting last night. At 4:10 Friday afternoon, we received that 164-page document that you guys got today. And they,
That's up to
and they
page 38.
expect, yeah, well, and they expected us to have comments
Yeah.
by last night, and
no.
we all pretty much said no, so because right now the chair hasn't been there the last couple meetings. I'm working with the Rutland Regional on getting us another meeting in 2 weeks so that we can get our comments together. So if anybody on this board has any comments, please get them to me. And, I mean, the way it is, from what we gathered last night, and Carrie can tell me I'm wrong if I am, but I don't think I am, they're gonna do this thing the way it is anyway. But at least we'll be on, if we have some issues
Be on
with it,
record.
we will be on record as having issues with it. And so, but it's, it's a big document. Our planning commission chair, Mr. Winslow, called me today. This is for you, John.
Yep.
He would appreciate it that when you get something like that cell tower that's going up here, you would get it to him quicker,
Okay,
because it was a bit of a rush for him to get it on the agenda for this meeting,
okay,
okay?
okay.
And it was asked last night, as a select board, will we be having any hearings on that cell tower, do you know?
Certainly up to you folks, whether you want to conduct hearings. We've had some interest in the general population about this project, but at the same time, there's relatively limited role that the local host town plays with regard to these types of projects. One thing we can do, and which one resident has asked us to do, is to use our interested party status to ask for a second balloon test, which we could then publicize so people could see on another occasion how visible this thing would be from their various vantage points in town. So, I mean, I'd be happy to put the whole discussion,
I know, I've been hearing a lot
the
of
whole thing
concerns.
on the board's agenda for the November 6th meeting. Maybe we'll have some input from the planning commission about what they've thought about it at their meeting as well.
Yeah, we didn't discuss much last night, other
Yeah.
than well, we sent a letter to them asking what the coverage area is gonna be.
Right.
Given where it is, we're wondering actually what the coverage area is.
You mean in terms of how far the signal can be
How far
sent?
the signal, you know, what part of the area.
Yep.
Because there's one going in Benson, there's one going in Mount Holly, there's this one, because they're all part of that First Net program, which is for first responders. And so these are three that are going in. The one in Mount Holly's objecting to because it isn't gonna help Mount Holly. It goes right over the top of them. So, you know, that was one of the reasons why we wanna see what area this is gonna cover. And then, of course, it was brought up, as we did for Mount Holly, well, can you make it look like a pine tree instead of a cell tower? Not that it isn't still gonna stand out, but at least it blends in a little better than a bright shiny
Yeah,
silver
we
thing.
could see whether the developer is willing to send someone up to our meeting to deal with questions. Yeah, wouldn't hurt to ask.
I think, yeah, because I think people in town are just beginning to hear about it.
Yeah.
And so I would think that having something here that people could come in and
Sure.
at least learn about
Yeah.
it.
Where's it going in here in town?
Oxbow.
Oxbow.
Road.
On Kit Hudson's
Kid
property,
Property.
Singular Wireless, I guess.
No, it's AT&T.
But I think they use that name interchangeably.
Oh,
AT&T.
okay, well, it's, yeah, it's AT&T. So, oh. Guess I've used enough time for
That's it?
tonight.
No,
Yep.
fine. Anybody else? No. Do we have any public comment this evening? We got public here tonight.
Yeah, we're not alone.
Hearing none, I'll go a little bit out of order tonight. We'll take up some new business first before we do old business. And I guess we'll do the presentation on the 2020 US Census.
Yeah, we have Peter
Mr.
Hathaway
Peter
here
is-
from the Census Office, and I know Peter from 10 years ago or so. He worked as the town manager over in Fairhaven for a bit.
Oh, good.
Thank you, John.
Sure.
So I just want to give John a compliment. I've met many select boards and many town managers and many town clerks.
Thank you.
And John is excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, of course you have it.
Yes, and I did distribute it to the other
We've
selectmen,
got a-
so you can find
everybody
it in
wants
a
a-
couple different places, but we'll follow
I'll
along.
use your coin.
Absolutely, please.
Okay, so as you may know, the census is the largest statistical agency in the United States. And of course, its job is to count everyone once, only once, in the right spot. And we do the decennial census every 10 years. Now, even though we do the decennial census every 10 years, the Census Bureau actually does over 130 other censuses. So they're never not busy, okay? So it's very probable that in between a 10-year period, you might see census takers in your community. The key is if you see census takers in your community, they should always have an ID that's like this, okay? They'll always have a laptop that says census on it and probably a backpack that says census on it. Now, for the decennial census, we notify law enforcement. So law enforcement is aware when we send people into the community. Okay, and the other thing about that is that we usually try to hire people from the local community. Okay, so we'll talk all about that more in 1 minute. Okay, just so you should know, now, I believe you distributed a PowerPoint.
Yes, that's right. It's in tonight's materials.
Okay. So in the PowerPoint, you'll see there's a slide that shows you an 800 number that you can call if you're concerned about fraud. All right, or if you were in a survey and you feel like suspicious about a survey and you want to check and see, Or if someone from the public calls you and says, gee, I'm suspicious about this, you can use this information that I'm giving to you to call, have them to, as a resource. Again, with census staff, they never ask for bank account numbers, they never ask for credit card numbers, they never ask for social security numbers. Okay, because if someone says they're from the census and they're looking for that specific information, I would check, because it would be highly unusual. All right, so as you know, job of the census, part of the job of the census is count everyone once, and only once, in the right place every 10 years. It's the largest peacetime mobilization that happens across the United States every 10 years. Okay, we literally hire hundreds of thousands of people across the United States and thousands right here in Vermont. That's how big it is. Just as a comparison, Thomas Jefferson did the first census in 1790. He hired 650 people. And with that, they counted 13 million people in 13 states. Now we're trying to count 140 million households and 340 million people. So it's drastically different than it was. Okay? So any ideas what census information is used for?
Apportionment of
Apportionment?
house seats.
House seats.
Yeah, what else? Any other ideas?
Divvy up the money.
Divvy up the money, excellent. Okay, so those are kind of the big ones. So it determines, of course, representation at the federal level, which probably won't change too much for Vermont. But it also determines representation at the state level in Montpelier. Okay, so based on census data, the lines could change in Vermont representation. If you know, population shifts one part of Vermont to another part of Vermont, then the representation is going to go with it. Okay, the other thing, as mentioned, was the distribution of $675 billion every year, determined by census data, okay, to the states. Okay, so it's very important for every state, okay, for every county and for every municipality, okay, to make sure that they get an accurate count. If you don't get an accurate count, and let's just say it's an undercount, okay, then you not only lose money based on the distribution from the United States, but you don't just lose it for 1 year, you lose it for
10 years.
10 years, okay? So you really get one shot, okay, to try to get an accurate count in your town and in your city, okay? The other thing to keep in mind is that, and this is really important for some people who might be afraid to take the census, is the census is totally confidential. Under Title 13 of the United States law, the Census Bureau cannot give out any personal information whatsoever. Okay, we can't give it to the other federal agencies. We can't give it to the FBI. We can't give it to immigration. We can't give it to the states. We can't give it to the courts. We can't give it to anybody. And there have been past times where other federal agencies have taken the census to court to try to get information, and the Supreme Court has ruled you cannot have it. So as you may know, no census data is given out except the number and the statistics. And it's important to remember on this, the Census Bureau is apolitical, okay? They're neutral, okay, and they're nonpartisan. Our job is to count everyone once, only once, and turn that count over without any personal information, okay? So this speaks to some people may be concerned about taking the census, okay? And that concern can be alleviated knowing exactly what the law is, and that since the first census, we have never given out any information. Okay? It's good to know. Let's see what it's like around that one. So if you have in your packets, there's a yellow thing that looks like this. I like to go over what's in the packet a little bit just to help you. So this is on confidentiality. See this one? Okay, so if anyone has concerns about confidentiality, that's the confidentiality law. And what we're going to talk about right now is this one.
Show to the camera.
Okay, so this is essentially the design of the census. So the first thing that happens for the 2020 census is that we have to establish where to count. We establish where to count by updating our master address file. Okay, we get addresses from the post office, we get addresses from other federal agencies, we get addresses from state agencies, we get addresses from local planning and zoning boards, because in 10 years, a lot changes. Construction happens, addresses changes, things change. So once we get our master address file ready to go, then we hire what we call address canvassers. And we literally hire thousands of address canvassers across the state of Vermont. Okay, and we have completed that phase. We've had them go into the community, we've had them verify addresses, and so that just ended in October. Okay, once we have an updated master address file, then we have to motivate people to take the census. Okay, we motivate people 2 ways. The first way is you're going to hear a national media campaign that's happening really soon, probably like January. You'll start hearing ads on TV and radio about take the census, it's good for your community. And the key to remember is we're all on kind of like survey overload. I mean, I bet you in any day, you probably get asked to complete 3 surveys, especially if you do anything online, okay? This is not the survey to skip, okay? Because this really impacts all the services in your community. There's a George Washington Institute study that you can find in the folder, okay, which shows you how impactful that count, accurate count that you need to get is in terms of everything that happens in your village and your town, okay? So once we count, once we motivate people to respond, okay, and I'm part of that because I'm partnership program. I come out to towns and villages and nonprofits and I try to coordinate to get the word out. So I'm asking all of you here to partner with the Census Bureau and get the word out, okay? Let people know, take the census, don't miss it, okay? It's absolutely necessary and benefits everything you do in the community. If the library wants to write a grant to start a reading program for children under 5, they're going to use census data, okay? So once we establish where to count and we motivate people to respond, then we actually have to count. This is the first decennial census that's ever been done online, okay? What's gonna happen is in mid-March, I'm just gonna refer to this so you guys know where to find it, okay? In mid-March, so if you take out this sheet here, okay? You'll see on the back of the sheet is a calendar, okay? And in mid-March, people are going to get letters. And the letters are going to say, go to this URL, okay? Type in the code in the letter, take your census. 7 questions, less than 10 minutes to take your census. Okay? So if you do that, you're done. Nobody comes and knocks on your door. If you don't do that, and we know, about 30% of Vermonters, they either don't have internet access, or they don't trust the internet, or they don't like the internet. So this is very important too. After you get that first letter, you're going to get 2 more reminders. On the 4th mailing, you're going to get a paper survey. So if someone says to you, I don't want to take the census online, I'm just too nervous about computers, I don't want that stuff on, that's fine. You're going to get a paper survey on the 4th mailing. Fill out the paper survey, send it back, you're done. So if you don't do it online, you don't do the paper and the 4th mailing, then you're going to get a letter that says, call us. We'll do it over the phone with you. We have 12 non-English speaking languages that are manning the phone banks, so we can talk most languages. We have 59 non-English language guides to help people. As a matter of fact, when you take it online, there's a drop-down box that says, what language would you like to take the census in? But anyway, call us. Okay, so if you don't do it online, you don't do it by paper, and you don't call us, then somebody's got to knock on your door, okay? Because it's, as you know, it's mandated by the Constitution that we count everyone every 10 years, but it's also mandated that if you live in the United States, it's your civic duty to take the census. It's not optional. We don't care why you're here. The fact that you are here and that you're living in the United States on or around Census Day, which is April 1st, 2020, okay, you're using services, you're using roads, you're using highways, take the census, you count, okay? Okay, so we went over, we'll never use social security numbers, we'll never use any kind of bank account information, we won't ask you for money. We went over the timeline, okay, jobs. So right now we're hiring for enumerators. We're actually hiring for many other positions in addition to enumerators. Okay, so if you again come here, you'll see this. Okay, This tells you all about Census 2020 jobs. And let me just say that next week is Census Recruiting Week, and I have census recruiting events throughout many of the Rutland, Bennington, and Middlebury. Because of course we're trying to recruit, and very low unemployment creates kind of a challenge to recruiting. But many of these jobs are full-time federal jobs, last more than 2 years, full federal benefits. Many of them are part-time. Most all of them are work from home. Okay, and many of them are work from home when you can. Okay, so in Vermont, we all work very hard. Sometimes we have first, second jobs, wouldn't be unusual, third jobs. I know many people who have 4 part-time jobs trying to make ends meet. Not that I'm suggesting a 5th, okay, but this is a nice way to make money. Let's say if you're a college student and you can only work on a Saturday afternoon from 1 to 4, that may be what they work with you to do. So I would encourage, anybody looking for a part-time job, please go online and fill out, the application. Okay, and you'll see on there the website, which is census2020.gov for jobs. All right. Any questions on it so far? All right. So we talked a little bit about key milestones. Again, March 2020 is when you start to get your letters to take the census. April 1st, 2020 is Census Day. Okay, it's generally wherever you live on April 1st, 2020 is where you take the census. Okay, so again, if you live away at a college on April 1st, 2020, the college will count you as living there. Okay, so wherever you live on April 1st, 2020. And then again, about mid-May, we'll have people start knocking on doors, and that'll go through the summer. And then we have to turn the count over to the president by December 31st, 2020. And then we have to turn it over to the states by April 1st, 2021. Okay? So that's kind of the design. So let's see, Pittsford is Rutland County or Aspen? Rutland County, okay. So there is some of the ways, let me back up a little bit. So the Census Bureau is very data-driven, okay? And we have a tool that we call Response Outreach Mapper, or ROAM. And what ROAM does is it looks at communities to determine what community might be a predicted low response rate, okay? And we do that by looking at the past and seeing what the percentage of people who answered surveys in 2010 and all the surveys in between to figure it out, okay? And so I know, for example, that Bennington, Rutland, Middlebury are shown as predicted low responses, okay? So what I try to do in those communities is I try to create something called a complete count committee, okay? And I know I mentioned the word committee and everyone goes, committees, they're awful, okay? But it doesn't have to be that bad, okay? You can make a committee. For example, Arlington had a revitalization committee, and so that committee meets anyway once a month. So why not include in that agenda once a month 5 or 10 minutes to talk to everyone that comes about how's it doing with the census? Are we getting the word out? Do you need any of the materials that I have in this packet? How can we get some? And some take it very seriously. Nashua, New Hampshire actually created a public service announcement with a drone that flies over and takes pictures of the firehouse and the elementary school, okay? And then it goes to the mayor's office, and the mayor talks about three minutes, and he says to Nashua, please take the census. It really impacts our community, okay, in these ways. So, it's a variety on what communities want to do, but the more that you can do to support the census, the more accurate count you get, and that, again, plays right into everything that you're trying to do, which is support the community, all right? Okay, so I also have a brochure in there about complete count committees. There is one starting in Rutland, okay? It's being started by United Way. There is also one, the assistant town manager of Middlebury, Chris English. He's also started a complete count committee. He has about 25 agencies on his complete count committee. They meet once a month. It doesn't have to be long, just to say, what do we need to get the word out? How do we get the hard to count people? All right, so in your packet, you would see then that this is a ROAM. So on page 9, is that page 9? I think that's page 9, okay? And it gives you an example of the predicted low response rates, okay, by the darker shading. So you can use Roam to pull up very specific information about your community by census tract. So for example, you could find out, you know, what the renting population is. You could find out the breakdown of age, breakdown of like single parent households, all of that information to help you outreach to that community. Okay. We also have a program to help you. It's called the Data Dissemination Program. Our Data Dissemination Program is free for you to use. All you do is call, and I'm told you get a person, not an answering machine, okay? And that they will help you find any information you might need out of the census data to write grants, you know, to do whatever it is that you need to do, outreach. So that's free to you. There's a on YouTube. If you go to census, you'll find it'll eventually take you to YouTube, but there's a little video on the layout of the 2020 census if anybody's interested. If you can connect with us on Facebook or any social mobile platform, that's great. That connects us to you. Okay. On the back of this PowerPoint, which I put in here, is contact information for the partnership program, contact information for the jobs, which you have in those sheets, okay, as well as the data dissemination program. On the front of this is my contact information. Okay, I'm responsible for partnership in Addison, Rutland, and Bennington counties right now. Okay, so if you need anything, I would be your go-to or contact person. I've talked to John about putting stuff on your website, drop-in. We have little drop-in electronics. I have everything you see here in electronic. Okay, I've met with the school district already and the supervisory union, and I've given them that information. Okay, I've met with town clerks.
Yep.
Okay, anybody that'll, you know, that'll have me to say, come on, let's take the census.
In fact, one of your colleagues is going to speak to our next town manager conference in Norwich, November 6th and 7th, and make a full-hour presentation to all the town managers that are there about the importance of the census.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, you get one shot at it for 10 years. All right. Questions? All right, well, thank you for letting me
for your
speak.
time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank
And
you for your
my card's in
presentation.
there too. If there's, don't hesitate, I'm here to help. If you need
Okay.
anything, call.
We will.
Great, thank you.
Appreciate it, Peter, thank you. Safe travels to you.
Thank you. I'm glad that you guys are here. That's profit, right?
It's actually two for.
Yeah, two for
Yeah.
tonight.
Super, and I have an appointment though with the town clerk shortly. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, we will take up the discussion on police coverage with Proctor Select Board.
Yes, we had an email from Carrie wanting some time with the board to talk about policing in Proctor. You've got the floor.
So, in Proctor, we are coming up on budget season, and I would say we're looking at our options as to how we're going to police our town. Currently, we have the sheriff, and I would say that maybe some of the people in town are unhappy with our coverage and the coverage that we're specifically not getting. So I guess we're here to talk about if that's a feasible option, if that's a possibility, what that would look like. Pretty open, it's just an open kind of discussion that I wanted to have regarding the police force and if that's something that we might be able to unify on.
Could I ask a couple of questions?
Yes,
Mr.
go
Chairman?
ahead, John.
As I thought about this, I had a few questions. First, how many hours of coverage do you get from the sheriff now per week, if you know?
Currently get 40 hours per week.
Okay. And are there specific coverage times spelled out in your contract with the sheriff?
There is not.
Okay, whatever suits
The
him.
sheriff kind of makes his
Okay.
schedule, which we don't know what it is. So that's kind of an issue.
Yep.
And I think we're a little open to when, I know one of the specific times is, and we have to look, I think, at this intersection as well, is our 5 corners and 3 o'clock when the grade school gets out. There seems to be a lot going on there, and we've heard from
A number
parents
of
in
people.
town how this is a problem because we do not provide transportation in Proctor. Everybody walks or gets a ride. So there's a lot of kids out, and
What-
there's a lot of traffic.
When you say budget season, you're thinking about if you were making a change July
Yes.
1st? And then I guess I had questions for the chief as to whether you feel that you would have the availability of current officers to cover that many hours. That seems like an awful lot to take on. What are your thoughts about it?
At this juncture, we wouldn't have enough people to cover
A full 40 hours.
for 40 hours, but I mean, we do have the ability to hire. But that also puts us into an equipment dilemma as far as cars.
Right.
Because we're obligated to Chittenden 10 hours a week. We're obligated to
Omea.
Omea at the truck detail 2 days a week. And Pittsford is our first priority.
Carrie, do you think any kind of hybrid approach might be possible where you cut the sheriff's hours by a certain number and reassign those to Pittsford or some other law enforcement agency?
I think we're pretty open, and I have thought about that too, that it might be a compromise that we go forth with. You know, we would have to all do some number crunching and look at it as, if that's a feasible thing, what are the pros and cons to that?
Whether the sheriff would live with that?
Yeah.
Well, there's that too, and if he doesn't, then what else is it that we are going to do?
I think more than anything, we're looking for our options. So if we can get a number and say, either this is gonna work or it's not gonna work.
I got a suggestion.
But we wanna make an informed decision, basically.
What suggestion, what if Proctor was to buy the vehicle, where it's a Proctor car, and we just supply the personnel?
That's an interesting.
You
Which
know.
I thought too.
That would, just off the top of my head. That takes away from our cruiser. It would be a dedicated car in Proctor. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I mean,
I don't have any thoughts on
Where
that.
we
I mean,
just-
as far as, but I know that in order to cover 40 hours,
yeah,
if
you'd
that's
have
what they're still
to,
looking for, then I would have to ramp up one more vehicle.
that's why I'm saying maybe this
Right.
is an answer to your
Well,
vehicle.
but also,
And your personnel is the next problem.
well, the personnel could probably be adapted by July 1st. I could probably have
Somebody else on.
a couple, I'm thinking probably 3 more people. I mean, I have Mr. Sullivan ready to start the process.
Right,
But in this case, I would look for somebody that's already certified that I
Right.
could just drop in,
yeah.
okay? That's my concern, is I don't have the equipment right now. I don't know that manpower would be a problem, given it's, what is it,
7 months, 8 months?
8 months away?
Yeah.
I-
That would certainly give Proctor enough time to look into the feasibility of having their own vehicle,
Right,
their own insurance, their own, that way everything's, they cover the maintenance, everything. All we do is pop an officer in that car and you're paying for the,
that would.
that would make a difference on how we do it in Chittenden naturally, because we charge for the car. This way we'd be charging only for the personnel.
Is it still 40 hours that you want to maintain over there? Because I had heard scuttlebutt that you had asked the sheriffs for 100 hours of service.
No, that's kind of how they took it, but that wasn't what we
Okay,
were asking
okay.
for. We were asking about the coverages where we could extend or make smaller some of the times that they're there.
There were some residents who were asking what would it take to have
Right.
a police officer in town 24 hours a day,
Right.
7 days a week.
But it wasn't, are we gonna do it?
Right.
We just
Okay.
wanted to know what.
Would
We
there
could
be a
ask Brandon, it
liaison?
costs a lot of money to do
Yes.
that.
Would there be a liaison person that, how we do it in Chittenden is once a month, we have a person that we contact up there that was a select board member, but she no longer is, but she's still our go-to person. She tells us the days that she wants us and the times that she wants us. And that's how we do it on a month-to-month thing with Chip.
We can certainly do that.
And have a go-to person, so if for some reason, my person is sick and I can't find somebody that we can maybe juggle it around a little bit.
Which we would appreciate, because currently, if that happens, we just don't have coverage.
And we don't find out until the end of the month.
Right, if we find out at our select board meeting that, hey, we weren't covered.
Okay.
And so that we know what we're comparing apples to apples on, would we be able to get a copy of your sheriff's contract, just to look it over, in terms of what the kind of services they're
I don't see
providing
why
to you?
not,
It's
it's
a public
public.
document.
Chittenden has, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's public, so I don't see why not.
It's in the town report.
Well, we should have a committee just.
Well,
come
that's
look
what
into
I
this.
was just gonna say, should we,
I think we should form
Form
a
a-
committee between Proctor and Pittsford.
well, or form a committee, at least in Pittsford.
Yeah, to look at.
To
what
look
the
at our
possibilities are
options
and what our options
And
are.
what it, that way we can give them an idea what it's gonna
'Cause
cost.
Right.
It will affect our budget too, as well
Well,
as
it will,
Proctor's,
yes.
so.
Absolutely.
And we can figure it out, I mean, you certainly, we can't go out and buy another vehicle.
No, no.
But if we have the vehicle, you figure the payments into their
Yeah,
cost.
yeah,
And if you just give us an idea of what a cruiser costs, I mean, we can
yeah.
either.
Well,
Well,
that's
you
why I'm saying-
know, what it's gonna cost from us,
Yeah.
or.
Yeah, we can
then
do
you
it either way.
figure out
That's
what
why
it's
I'm
gonna
saying-
cost you.
And then we can budget for it. I mean, I think our big thing is that we're starting budget workshops. We
Right.
started the last meeting.
Yeah.
And so we just want to make sure that when town meeting comes, we're ready to put this before the voters. So
We, for example, have a fund to which we appropriate money each
Right,
year
each
to
year
support the police
for the
cruiser
cruiser.
replacements. And another way to tackle it would be some sort of lease to buy situation that we did look at previously as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I think we'll form a
I
committee.
think that's a good
Yeah.
idea, though, to have
Yeah.
some kind of side committee, because there's a lot to consider, and a lot that we'll have to go back and forth
Yeah.
on.
Can I ask you, what kind of appetite is there among your colleagues on the board to proceed
Yeah, are
with something like
they,
this?
We're all on board.
All on board?
We're all on board. It was easy.
Didn't know if you were going rogue tonight.
Yeah.
We're not going rogue.
Actually, we had to draw straws to see who was going to
So you wanted to come,
We
okay.
would have had a quorum if we all.
Yes, if everybody wanted to come, there'd be a quorum that we announce.
Well, I think that's something we can look into, and we'll form a committee on our board.
And,
And
yeah, I
maybe
mean,
you,
and
I'd be more than willing to sit on that committee along with our chief and
I'm willing.
Dave, myself, with John, and maybe you come up with a couple people,
Okay.
or the two, or whatever.
We'll
we'll-
definitely
Come up with time we can meet and throw some
But I think,
ideas around and.
well, and, but for
And
myself, I think we,
We-
before
oh,
we
yeah.
join with,
Oh,
we
yeah.
need to
Oh, yeah, we will.
have our
We'll
own,
have our
so.
own first, definitely.
We'll have
Oh,
our own
definitely.
first, and
Yeah,
then
you do the same thing, have, that
you
way.
do the same thing,
Right.
and then once
Then
we've
we'll get
both got our
together and-
numbers, we can come together and
Yeah.
see.
in our questions and
Yeah.
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
might look at, like,
Yeah, the good news is, we have struck a good relationship with Chittenden. This would be a different scale altogether,
Right.
but it could be done.
But it's on the
That's a good
same idea,
precedent.
It's only this is gonna be a little bigger, I think.
Well, and I think, from what I understand, you know, the state police doesn't really wanna handle the smaller crimes that our local police department does. They're looking for highway enforcement and major crimes.
Mhm.
So, you know, I think as we go further into the future,
You're gonna see more
this
of
type
this.
of an agreement is gonna be what we're, if we want police, that's what we're gonna have to do.
Exactly. So,
And it certainly would make sense to Pittsford. You know, do we want to go to West Rutland? No. But
No.
for Proctor and Chittenden, which we're kind of interconnected with anyway, as far as highways and everything else, I think it makes sense. And if it can boost up our department, as long as everybody understands that if it's Pittsford's police, Pittsford comes first.
yeah. But Proctor's a small town too, which is nice because it's really
Physically small.
physically small
Physically.
and it's really
We've
close
only
to
got
us.
27 miles of road.
Yeah, and you're close to us with a couple of roads that
Yeah.
we're in there real
You
quick.
make a loop
And
right
make a
around.
loop right around, you know.
it's a pretty good loop, and some of the troubled spots aren't trouble anymore. Beaver Pond is pretty clear, you can see
You can
everything
see it.
now.
Yeah.
Much to the
So-
chagrin of the state.
Well, now, let's not talk about water right now. I'm still reeling from last night's water. But I think that as a representative of voters, it is something that we have to look at, because our townspeople, our citizens are not pleased at all about our coverage or our response.
Well, you told me about that issue with your neighbor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think no matter what, even with Pittsford coming first,
It's
you would
still
be able to
close.
respond much quicker and much more appropriately within the proximity. You know, it
So
just
we're
seems
fairly
like it will be a
close, yeah.
very mutually beneficial relationship,
Yeah.
I hope.
We have a large roster, but not
Sometimes
everybody's
the
got
hours are, the
so much
times.
availability,
right.
and that's the key, is to
Right,
figure out
right.
what available hours there are.
And I would, except for the most recent hire, I would make sure their availability was,
That's what you gotta look into.
yeah, that's what I gotta look into.
Yeah, you've gotta come up with some people and some times that
I
we
think
can work with.
I think we can come up with people, I do. But their hours and availability, because probably everybody's working another job, and, but as it gets narrowed down, then I'll be able to make a selection.
Yeah, 'cause I can see where you could combine some patrol times, whether it's Pittsford and Proctor, if you've got a 6-hour loop in there,
The good
maybe
thing, Tom-
sometimes dedicated there, you know, it's kind of.
The good thing
it's close
that I
enough.
see in a situation where it's 40 hours a week, we're developing our own backup.
Yeah,
You know, for like, say, a major accident or something, if there's a, Chittenden is too spotty, it's hit or miss, it's, you know, but that would be pretty beneficial to us to have our own backup in an event of a big situation,
yeah.
so.
I think it's something we can build on and look into, that's for sure.
I'll be in touch with you
Yep.
and you and you about getting together for our first meeting.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good. Well, we thank you for coming.
All right, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
We'll
Thanks.
touch base
And-
about
yeah.
when we can all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
If you
we'll
have-
You got
we'll get
it.
back to you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate your time.
All righty.
See you, Carrie.
I'll be talking to you soon.
Yes.
Oh, let's see, I guess, you wanna finish up the new business first, and then we'll go to the old business? What do we got? Or are you here for a specific reason? No? Okay. So,
He's our chaperone.
he's a
Interested in one topic.
Okay, well, if you're interested in that one, we'll hit it right now.
We already did.
Oh, we did.
That was one.
Well, that was one, okay,
Oh,
that was
you got
one.
another, okay.
The other, the fire,
Burn.
the burn? Okay, well, let's
Well, I
go
can
into
give you a
old
quick
business.
update on that.
Okay, well, let's do old
Yeah.
business, and
Yep.
we'll do the burning ordinance. Let's do that first.
Okay, the update is that when I last spoke to you and asked for public hearing dates to be scheduled, I was under the misapprehension that those public hearings were actually required. But while they are required for a town plan adoption or a zoning ordinance adoption, they are not required for an amendment to an ordinance such as this. What is required is that the select board simply enact the
The
amendment
amendment,
at a date certain and publicized. I would suggest November 6th.
yep.
That would then trigger a 45-day period by which town residents would have the option to petition for a vote on the matter. And if there was such a petition, then we would have to arrange for a vote. But in my experience, there's been very little input or concern about the limited way that we hope to amend this ordinance. So my proposal, again, would be to put it on the agenda for November 6th for simple adoption of the amendment that we've already discussed, and then see about the 45 days passing. If it passes without any sort of petition filed, then it becomes effective.
Okay. I've had no input. I don't know if any of the other board members have.
No,
I've
not
had
at all.
none.
It's a pretty modest
So,
change.
Pretty modest changes, nothing earth-shattering on the ordinance that I saw. Just gives the board a little more
More
flexibility.
discretion, more
Yeah.
authority
Yeah.
on the size and timing of burns. Yeah.
Okay, anything else on that? No? Tax sale process.
Yes, we are making progress. Of the 11 original parcels which met our eligibility criteria for tax sales, 4 now have resolved through various means, and 1 might resolve as early as tomorrow with a planned sale of other property to come up with the funds to pay off his balance here. So that is how the process typically works, and it's working according to plan. There next will be the town attorney kind of rolling up his sleeves, doing a little bit of title search work, and starting to incur expenses, and that often is something that prompts other delinquent taxpayers to come forward before they see too many expenses accrue. So we hope that'll play out as well.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, we'll go into new business then. Review of backyard target practice shooting over, I guess it's over,
Furnace.
Road.
Not too far from, I guess, the Babcock place. The
Yeah,
chief tells me that there's been some law enforcement response to this particular woman's concern, such that I don't know that you want to, well, it's up to you as to what you want to do, but as to whether you want to take her suggestion to consider something like an adopting an ordinance limiting the discharge of firearms to certain times and places and manners, since this particular situation seems to be resolving.
has been
And
remedied.
Would you like me
The
to
chief can
explain
explain
it?
it.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
I got a call from a couple residents. It's 2 houses north of Roger Rose gravel pit drive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
I went over there, the house is up for sale. The original owner, the owner of the house lives now in New Hampshire. I went there, I did some snooping around, I did find some shotgun shell casings on the target. I did then check for appropriate backstops, which they did have, okay, but it is close to other houses. And as I was walking around looking at the backstop, I also found where they were burning garbage out by the brook, and I contacted Bradley.
That's a big no-no.
Yeah. I then came back and I contacted the owner of the house in New Hampshire and explained to her what was going on, and she said, I've lived there for 12 years and never had the police at my house, and they've been there 8 times since I've moved out.
Jeez.
Oh, man.
She said it's my daughter and her boyfriend.
Oh.
She said they're on their way out, I'm getting rid of them, the house is gonna sit empty. So I have been monitoring the activity at the house. There's only been one vehicle there now. And we came back from training a couple of Wednesdays ago, and the lady was supposed to meet me there, but she didn't show up. But I have been watching it, and all the activity has ceased, as far as I know. I haven't got any complaints from neighbors on either side or across the street. I don't want to mention any names.
Right.
Right,
And I
well,
did come back and see if it fell within the confines of the village, which is no discharge, but it doesn't.
No, that's way out in the town.
Way out, yeah.
That's way
But
out.
I did check that.
Yeah, well, that's way outside the village.
And as I said, VLCT has given us some guidance
Yeah.
about how one would go about drafting an ordinance to limit discharges in town, but maybe we don't need to.
I don't know if we need to go there right now. Unless-
Yeah, I mean, what we looked, when I was on the planning commission, I mean, if you get,
You're gonna
I mean, if every month we're having this problem,
That's something different.
then you need to be, but this
This
is,
is
you know,
isolated.
an occasional isolated thing once in a while, you don't wanna start with
Chief,
an
have you
ordinance.
reported your involvement and your findings to the woman who was concerned about this? Because if not, I'd be happy to follow up with her.
Well, this one I didn't know about,
Okay.
because
Oh, it was a different neighbor?
It was a different one.
yes, this
I see.
was
okay.
Oh.
2 different neighbors. I talked to them,
I see.
but I wasn't, on this one, you said you were gonna send me a copy of the letter. right?
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't do that.
Okay.
But I will be happy to follow up with her, and
Yeah.
maybe that'll satisfy
Yeah.
her to a large degree, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
please let me know, because I have been over there and spoken to them.
Okay.
Let's leave it for tonight, and if anything
Yeah.
else further, then we'll take it up another time.
Yep.
And I mean, looking at the size of that lot
Yeah.
and her,
Yes.
because it's only like 150
I mean,
feet
it's
wide,
not-
you can't get 200 feet.
No.
So it wouldn't work.
Be a
But
problem.
Anyway, yeah.
All right. Budget process for 2020.
Yeah, I'll just roll it out. November 6th, we will, thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Take
care.
November 6th will be the first night that we see a draft budget for 2020. I'm sorry, 2021.
21.
And I'm now waiting for department heads to give me their
Wish list.
budget proposals, which usually do include a wish list. So the first draft you see will be way out
Just to
of
make it.
balance, because I will have just allowed everybody to have their say in that first budget draft.
Yep.
Then, on my own and with input from you for the next few weeks, we will try to
Start
find a
trimming and
balance
see what we can find.
Okay.
and see what we can afford to do and what we can bring to the taxpayers. So usually by January, we need to adopt the final version of a budget, which would then go into the town report, which alerts people to what we're proposing for town meeting, which is the time at which everybody votes on the general fund, the highway fund, and the village fund.
Unfortunately, I'd like to say that this will be one of the first times I've been able to vote on the budget.
That's right. Yeah, you don't vote on it.
And usually you find it a convenient golf
Yeah,
course
he's
meeting.
usually at another meeting.
So your
he gets out
fingerprints
of
are
voting
now
on
on the
it.
budget.
I don't have to go anymore.
Right.
I bet you he'll be sick that night.
Oh, I don't know.
So now, like the police department, rec, they give the budgets to you.
Right, and usually for at least the larger budget elements, we ask those department heads to come.
Well, that's what I was-
Right.
Align with
I
it.
would
explain.
I would like to have them explain it to me so I understand
So
what
at least that
they're.
first night, we traditionally do highway, rec, and I think we've had the fire chief come
Fire
in.
usually comes in.
So
Yeah.
we can certainly have
In
others.
some cases too, that they do like their 5-year.
Five-year capital.
Five-year
plan
capital
for big
expenditures. If
expenses.
they
Well,
don't have
that's
anything big.
Stuff we
for
need,
example, yeah.
we need to know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. One of the things you might see in this first draft is, I haven't heard any strong objections, for example, the town taking over the Pittsford first response
yeah.
function.
No, I was gonna ask
into
you
our
where
budget.
how
So,
that's coming.
What we have done is we visited the first response building. We have a rough sense of what their revenues, such as they are, and expenses are. And I think for this first draft, what we can at least do is move our, I think, $25,000
they get.
annual appropriation from
Right.
special appropriations
Move that
into
over
a line
into a
item for
line
them,
item.
as a starting point anyway. And we'll see if they want to come and pitch
Where are we,
for
John,
more.
as far as the logistics legally on the land and stuff? Is
Yeah.
that being,
Yeah, we've got the approval of the folks who deeded that property to Pittsford First Response, and that's the Carters,
Carters, right.
who had a right of refusal if they didn't like the fact that it wasn't going to be used for public purposes, but it is going to be
Right.
used for public purposes, really the same purpose. And so that's no problem, and then it's just a matter of us having them deed the property over to the town, and then making sure VLCT has it on their insurance roster going forward.
so time-wise then, this will probably take effect, what, July 1st?
That's when the money would be
2020.
available. And it would also give the voters an
And
opportunity
gives us
to
time.
discuss it as part of the town
Right,
meeting.
yeah, because it should be.
So the transfer of that building
Building and the land.
and the
Right,
land
that's-
will come to the town with no
Right, yes.
expense to the land other than
Right.
obviously,
That's right.
Lawyer fees. to-
well, lawyer fee,
Yeah.
We
but,
do know that there's some deferred maintenance that'll have to be
Yeah,
addressed, and
right.
perhaps we'll set up a building fund, that you
Right.
can sock some money into
Yeah.
for a few years.
I do know they just put a brand-new set of stairs on the back of it.
Oh, yeah?
yeah, those, well, that was an
Bad.
accident waiting to
Oh,
happen.
yeah. Those are brand
Those were
new
bad.
stairs. Yeah, they were bad.
So, yeah, even though they
So-
kind of know that this is coming, they've continued to do their fundraising, and we appreciate that.
But there are, I know the windows need to be replaced
Right.
in it and some things like that. but
Siding.
Nothing real major, I don't think. Some
Siding.
siding needs to be done, needs to be painted.
I think the roof, when we look, I think the roof is good.
I think the roof is not bad.
I think the roof's
But
all
the
right.
siding needs, there's some
Siding, well,
issues.
yeah.
And, but hopefully the long range would be, this may all come into play, is to eventually build up on that
Foundation.
foundation that's already there, been in place for, God, 20, 25 years
More
at least
garage
or
bays,
more.
you think?
You got 3 bays,
Yeah.
which would have 2 bays for our police department, and the third bay could be their office. Get them
Yeah.
out of the closet.
Get 'em out of the
So
closet, yeah.
to me, that would make a lot of sense. Now you've got all your
Yeah,
emergency
especially if you are
services right
talking
in one
about a few
area.
extra officers, more elbow.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
this is probably a perfect time to be considering some of this. That's why I think we need to
Yeah,
discuss
we
all this
need,
stuff.
no, we do.
Yeah, so it's a perfect time, I think, to do
Yeah.
it. So, okay. Discussion regarding the possible opioid
Yeah.
litigation.
As you saw in the original packet, Mr. Chairman, apparently, without
There's-
our involvement,
We
we've
got,
been identified with tens of thousands of other towns, cities, and counties throughout America to
That-
be members of a class for class action lawsuit purposes in which municipalities and local governments are seeking compensation from the pharmaceutical industry, 13 different manufacturers, for the impacts to the towns of opioid addiction, whether it's through, the use of town clinics or extra police patrols or this, that, and
We've
the other
had several
impact.
police issues with
Well,
opioids
the
in this
schools
town.
too, the school budgets are certainly
Yep.
affected by.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So as to this pending class action, if you read all the fine print I just did, it seems to suggest that to do nothing simply leaves us in the class
the
action
class.
for our eventual share of whatever national settlement is negotiated with these firms. To opt out gives us our own freedom of movement, but it also puts on us the burden of managing a lawyer or a law firm to litigate.
Stay where we are, I guess.
Presumably
Yeah, I
with no
know.
expense, but nevertheless, that's quite an undertaking for a small town.
No?
The town of Bennington has taken a different course. It has hired a litigation firm, and VLCT had an availability a couple weeks ago for towns to visit with this particular law firm that they selected. And I have a call scheduled with the town manager in Bennington tomorrow, Stu Hurd, and he'll tell me what went into his decision about why to do this separate approach. And maybe that'll help guide our decision-making going forward about it.
My foot hit that big bang on it.
But what I'll be happy to do at the next meeting is give you further feedback as to why Bennington is doing what it's doing, see if that makes us want to follow suit, or simply be
Leave it.
passive, let the class action proceed, and eventually hear about some sort of settlement that we might get 1/1,000,000th of 1% of.
Well, and
Well,
that's,
it sounds
and I
like-
think that's
Yeah.
the, I mean, in looking through that stuff, I think the only, the downside of not allowing this to go through, from what, the interpretation I got is there's the possibility that if you are part of this class action lawsuit, and let's just say something happens in Pittsford that we really could sue the
Yes.
pharmaceutical companies,
You're not
we won't be
able to.
allowed to
Right.
because that will
Right.
be part of
And
this.
I understand Bennington, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Brattleboro went that course too, because those are communities that have been really.
Yeah,
Oh, hammered.
they're
Oh,
hammered.
yeah.
You just walk
Yeah.
the streets of Bennington, you see it all around you.
Oh, yeah.
And Brattleboro too.
So I think, yeah, the more information you
Yeah.
can get us, and I think we all need to think about, because if, I figured out, what is it? There's and these are people that die, there's 130 people that die a year in the state of Vermont. There's 600,000 people, so that's, with our 3,000 people, that's about a half a person.
Yeah.
So, granted, that isn't the people that are affected, but the amount of money we would get will be
Oh,
insignificant.
I agree. I mean,
So,
it's gonna be big dollars, but our share will
Our
be very
big-
small.
our
very
share will
small,
be
small.
virtually nothing.
And the lawyers,
Yeah.
I'm sure, will take their cut.
Oh,
They'll take half.
yeah.
One thing I will point out is that, you may remember that about 4 or 5 years ago, we gave a commendation to Stefan Goulet, who administered Narcan,
Narcan.
right here in town.
We've had a couple Narcans.
We've had a few, yeah.
We've had a few.
So we
Yeah.
can,
Not just one.
we can unfortunately know that it's everywhere.
Oh, yeah, it's everywhere.
So I'm happy to report back to you, and we do have until, I think, November 22nd to opt out.
Yeah.
And so we'll have a couple meetings in which we can change our strategy.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
With that said, meeting adjourned.